There's a moment, I think, for a lot of women as we come into our third act where some of the drives that were certainly with me when I was younger, either to be, sexually alluring or professionally competent, whatever the thing was at the moment, some of that is either dissipated or been satisfied. And I've got other concerns, I've got other things I'm thinking about, and I want a place where we can all talk about that stuff.
Hello, you are listening to the Late Bloomer Living podcast. I'm Yvonne Marchese, your host, and I'm so happy you're here. I created this podcast to give you inspiration and let you know you're not alone in feeling stuck in midlife. I also invite you to join the Age Agitators Club for women, where we come together monthly to hatch our plans for making waves as we age. Being part of this community for women will remind you on a regular basis that you're not too old and it's never too late to do that thing you've been thinking about. You can find more information at latebloomerliving.com/community, and I hope to see you there. Hello, my friend. Today I am bringing you a story of reinvention and courage. My guest is the amazing Jean Fleming, a writer who in her late 50s left behind a fast-paced career in the U.S. to embrace the tranquility of life in a small Greek village. Talk about reinvention. Along the way, Jean also brought a 20-year-old dream to life by launching Certain Age magazine, which is a bold platform that celebrates and amplifies the voices of midlife women. I love that she's created a platform where women can, as she says, be unapologetically themselves. So, without further ado, here's Jean Fleming. Jean, thank you so much for being with me today.
Hey, hi, I'm so glad to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Me too. And here we are. You're at the end of your day. I'm at the beginning of mine.
Yeah, miracle of technology.
Oh my gosh. So tell me, because it's just burning a hole in my brain, about the move to Greece. How did that happen?
Well, I'm going to start the story back my 10th wedding anniversary. And my husband and I decided to go someplace we'd never been together. And that was Greece. I had read an article about the island of Hydra, which is also, it looks like Hydra when you see it written out, but it's pronounced Hydra.
Oh, cool.
And it's a famous island because Leonard Cohen set up camp there for a while, and it's got kind of a, artsy bohemian vibe. But the thing that really caught my attention about it was that there were no cars there, and no cars is like a ticket to paradise, in my opinion. So everything is, they have donkeys, horses, not even bicycles. So we went there for our 10th anniversary, and it was definitely a blow to the heart for me. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is my place. These are my people. So I was already kind of scheming, how do I get back here? And then 4 years later, we came back. We started to come at different times of year. And at that point, by the end of my second trip to Greece, I literally remember walking down from the Acropolis and being like, I got to live here. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know what's going to happen, but somehow or other, it's going to happen. And I literally, my husband had already gone home at this point, but I woke up at midnight. There were church bells ringing. This was in Athens. And I got up and I made a vow. I said, to all the gods of this land, I am going to live here. And flash forward, that was 2018. So we started to make a plan for how we were going to go. And we thought, okay, we're very practical. We thought we'd move in March 2020. So if you kind of remember what happened in 2020. So the universe helped me out on this one. I actually had been working at a fairly big corporate job up until then. And they decided to eliminate my position, which turned out to be a great thing. And so that happened in August of 2019. So we were like, oh, great, we can go earlier, because I didn't know I was getting ready to quit. So it all worked out. We arrived in Greece in December 2019, so just about 5 years ago now. And before we even touched down, we were flying in, and I looked at my husband. I said, "This is the best decision we've ever made." And I would stand by that. It's just one of those, kind of impulsive, but also like, I knew I had to do it somewhere in my being. I just knew I had to do it.
Yeah.
So here we are. It's just felt like right place, right time,
Yeah.
moment. Like this is a moment, and a moment in my life that I have had longed for, and for many people, I think, who whatever the dream is, there's that point in the journey where you're like, I have no idea this couldn't possibly happen. And I certainly had felt that way even as much as not as close as a year before that. I was like, I want to do this, but it's sort of like saying, I would like to have a third leg or something like that.
Right.
It's
It's
like
it's
probably
a
not going
big
to
deal. It's a
happen.
big move moving out of the
Yeah.
country. And so did you have plans for what you wanted to do when you moved? Like, were you thinking of it as like a retirement move, or were you thinking of it as going and doing remote work somehow? What was in your brain for like day-to-day activities once you made the move?
Yeah. Deliberately wanted to be in a fairly quiet place, which we are in, because I wanted to really focus in on my own writing and also on to create this magazine, Certain Age, that had been kind of in my heart to do for a long time. And I just felt like the time is now, like all of the elements have come together. This is it. Put up or shut up. So
How
it's a
long was it in your heart? That's so exciting.
Really a long time. I had been, gosh, I mean, I can remember having a conversation with a friend of mine easily 20 years ago about it.
Wow,
And
really?
thinking like how back then it was like it would have been a print thing, and how would I do that? I had worked in print magazines a little bit, so I knew a bit about how they operate and what's required. But it seemed, as a startup venture, it seemed pretty like a heavy lift. But the idea never went away, and I kept building a network of amazing women. And then now here I am in Greece, and the time is here. The tools have evolved so much that, we can all make incredible experiences without, I mean, I'm not a technical person, but I'm able to put out a reasonably decent magazine. And yeah, so it's just kind of like a dream that never went away. And I'm glad it never did. So.
Yeah. So did you originally have certain age as the title, as did you have the idea in mind of having women's voices that are a certain age? Was that way back 20 years ago? Is that what it looked like, or did that evolve over time?
It has evolved over time a little bit, but the idea was always, it didn't have the name yet. That came as I was really getting serious about production here. But I really wanted to have a place where women could speak the truth about their lives. 20 years ago, it would have been maybe a slightly different brand of truth, just
Mm-hmm.
because the concerns I had at 42 are different than the ones I have at 62. But, they're not that different, honestly, especially as I listen to women now, um, younger women, the kinds of things that they're going through. It's all on a continuum, I'd say, of concern and experience.
Mm-hmm.
So, but now my focus is really on lifting up stories of women. You know, I fudge the line. I usually say over 50, but it's not. Some of them are under 50. A lot of them are well over 50. I've got writers in their 80s, writers who are in their 40s, the whole spectrum. And I don't really think it's about the age. I think it's about the attitude. There's a moment, I think, for a lot of women as we come into our third act where some of the drives that were certainly with me when I was younger, either to be, sexually alluring or professionally competent, whatever the thing was at the moment, some of that is either dissipated or been satisfied. And I've got other concerns. I've got other things I'm thinking about. And I want a place where we can all talk about that stuff and women can showcase their amazing talents. And underneath it, my underlying hope and wish for it is that as we tell our stories to each other and find our common ground, we recognize how much power is there. And we harness that power and unleash it because, there's things with it the world could benefit with, I think, from
Abs-
our energies.
yeah, I'll say abso-freaking-lutely is what I'll say to that. Um, so when you say, okay, there's a couple of things that you've mentioned. First of all, that you were in your early 40s when the idea originally came to you.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned that maybe the focus has changed for you on what you're circling around. That maybe in your younger years, a lot of it might have been focused on being sexually attractive, as I think many of us were at that point in our lives. Um, Building a career was another thing that you mentioned. Where do you find yourself now circling mostly?
Yeah, I really feel this is the time around voice and creating the things like writing the books that I want to write, creating this magazine, creating connections, people like you and others who are also in this space, trying to make community that is elevating and amplifying all of these voices in different ways. Again, because I think there are really urgent things to do, and that women of a certain age have an incredible gift to give in that situation. We saw, not to get political, but we saw a few little hints of it in the election cycle that just finished. To me, that was a really interesting indicator of some tectonic shifts that are happening in our society, I think. So I feel encouraged that women who are older are feeling freer to express themselves, and that there's more places for us to do that. And I feel that it's a really important contribution going forward.
Yes, indeed. I am with you on that.
Mm.
I feel like there is a wave and a movement around older women standing up and feeling more free and more determined to use their voices, which
Me
I find
too.
very heartening.
Oh, same. And I see some really interesting businesses taking shape, production companies in Hollywood that are really trying to focus on this demographic, as they would say, but publishing companies who are looking for, 50 plus authors. There's a lot of energy there. And, podcasts like yours, I think are part of building that momentum. And it's really interesting to be at this place in life, and to look at kind of how we create the things that people consume, and which ones become popular and don't become popular. And the more I think about it, and especially with things like AI coming at us really fast, the more I think that kind of finding your people and nourishing that and creating that ecosystem is going to be what generates life in the future, because there's going to be so much, there already is so much that is created with a very light human touch, if any at all. So I think finding those really authentic voices, people who are really telling their stories truthfully, like that's the currency.
So when did you actually launch the magazine? What was the launch date?
We launched March 2021, and we
March
have
2020.
published almost 100 pieces since then. So,
Wow, fantastic. How many
yeah, thank
issues
you.
is that with 100 pieces in it?
I don't really work in terms of issues. We publish
Okay.
more or less once a week. There have been several long breaks in that.
Uh-huh.
For a long time, it was just me doing it. So if I didn't have anything, or if I was overwhelmed with other stuff, then there were some breaks. Now I have a fantastic woman named Sage Cohen, who is our poetry editor, hugely talented poet herself, and just has an incredible gift for finding amazing poems. So that's been a really nice enhancement this coming year. So far, it's been nonfiction and now poetry. I'm looking to add fiction this coming year. We'll start to do some events. So we got plans, lots of plans in the kitchen right now. It's been really a lot of fun to try to dream this stuff up.
So it's 20 years in the making. Here you are in the making. You're making the
Yeah,
donuts,
literally making it. Yeah.
right? And you started off doing most of the writing, and now you're getting to a point where you're able to curate it more and have other people doing more contributions. What has this whole journey been like for you? What have you learned about yourself in actually getting this baby off the ground? Hey, let's take a quick break because I've got something fantastic to share with you. Have you ever thought about what it really means to live your best life? Well, my dear friend Lou Blazer has, and she's sharing her discoveries in her weekly newsletter called We're All Getting Older. It's a newsletter for anyone exploring personal growth, intentional living, and embracing joy, especially in midlife and beyond. Lou has this wonderful obsession with the idea of dying happy, and she shares her insights on how to make the most of our lives right now, every week. I look forward to opening her emails every week because it's filled with inspiration and actionable ideas. If that sounds like something you'd love too, you got to check it out. Signing up is super easy. Just head over to loublazer.com. That's LOUBLASER.com. And you can do it there. Trust me, you'll thank yourself for it. And now back to our regularly scheduled programming. What have you learned about yourself in actually getting this baby off the ground? Let's start with that one.
That's a good one. Well, I have learned to paraphrase the spiritual wisdom that wherever you go, there you are. And that's in good things and bad ways. That my habits and tendencies in the past, I might have thought, oh, that I feel this way because I have these circumstances, and if only I were doing things for myself, I would feel differently. I might behave differently. That turns out not to be true.
Oh my gosh. I am so glad you said that because that is true, isn't it? I can echo that experience. No, seriously, Jean, I mean, wow, you just hit something on the nail on the head for me. Because I remember, many years ago being in a job where I felt underemployed, underused, just, like there was nowhere to go for me. And thinking that, photography, if I could just get my photography business to full time, then everything would be better. And the truth is that once I did end up going full time with my photography, I still had something, like you said, wherever you go, there you are. There was still Yvonne in her thought loop saying things about herself. And it was that realization that led me to go, I'm still struggling. I'm still on the struggle bus. So it's clearly not the work that is doing this. It's this thought loops in my head. And that is when I decided to do the experiment of getting up every morning before my family so I could meditate and move my body every day. And doing that one change in my life created an avalanche of change that led to the podcast eventually. Now that I've got the podcast going and I'm still doing a photography business, what I find, and I think why I'm so resonating on this issue, is that I still get caught up in the feelings of overwhelm around the amount of work that needs to get done and the grind of it, even though I have completely chosen the work that I'm doing. I get to do this. And I know that, and there's aspects of it that I love, like talking to you right now. This is the juice,
Yeah.
But then there's all the other stuff that has to happen to get the podcast out the door and promote it and all the things.
Yeah.
And so I've come to this point in my life where I'm looking to incorporate playfulness into as many parts of my day as I can, because as you said, wherever you go, there you are. And so I'm like, well, if I'm here now, I may as well be playful about it and just trying to figure out how to get out of that constant grind, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. That totally resonates for me. That notion that it's an inside job, and the outside job, like this is an amazing. I have an incredibly blessed setup. Like I live in a beautiful place. I have an amazing office. I am the master of my time, all the things that I wanted when I was, clocking in and doing the corporate gig. And I still have a lot of those thoughts. And that's great. Like, that's information. That just tells me, like, oh, okay, there's something more to those thoughts. They have a whole other layer to unpack for me.
It sounds like you were talking about getting curious about it. Am I on the right
Yeah,
track?
that's exactly right. Yeah, definitely curious about it and seeing it more as information, not as something that requires self-shaming or disappointment in myself, all of those narratives
Yes.
that I don't, I know I carry a lot of that stuff around. I am in a really different world now. I'm not working for a corporation. I'm just working for myself. So what does it look like to achieve now? What's the nature of satisfaction for me now? And those are really juicy questions to be thinking about. That's a really rich question to sit with.
That is the question that can take you through the rest of your life, isn't it?
I hope it
Seriously, like,
will.
yeah, that is like the depths to be plumbed in that question are bottomless, I think. Um, so I want to ask you about the journey with the magazine, having to start off doing a lot of the writing yourself, and now getting to the point where you're more curating and you've got more people contributing content, which I think probably frees you up to do more of your own writing. I think you have a book that's in the works. Is that still being written, or are you in editing on
Yeah.
that, or what's
No, I
happening with
just
that?
just finished the final edits on a novel manuscript.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it was very exciting to finally get that done. And I have an agent who is working his networks, and so we'll see where it goes. So yeah, that's a huge other part of my life is my own writing. And then with certain age, yeah, becoming sort of pivoting from the main contributor to more of the editor has been, I love to edit. I love to work with writers. And, I think there's a really beautiful kind of, I always say it's like being a midwife, standing in that place of awe when somebody's doing something amazing and trying to bring it into the world and helping them to realize their vision for it is a real privilege. I get to work with the whole spectrum of writers, from people who are getting their first publication credits to very established writers and everybody in between. So it's a huge spectrum. And I love that part of it too. So I'm very proud that we're the first publication credit for many people, and we pay all of our writers, which is also something I'm proud of. We don't, you're not going to get rich writing for a certain age, unfortunately, not yet. But I am very proud that we're paying everybody. I don't believe anyone should be giving their work away for free, and so I'm happy that we can help at least establish that as a norm.
That's really amazing. So, it sounds like you're just in such a sweet spot right now of life. I love that for you.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
and it's not something that happened by accident. It's so intentional. Like you know, you made that happen. So kudos to you.
Yeah.
And I had a question, but I want to ask you another question first.
Okay.
How big was the fear factor in doing this? And if it was big, I heard the response. If the fear factor was huge for you, how did you move through it?
Yeah. And just a clarifying question. So what by this, do you mean moving to Greece? Do you mean
Yeah,
starting the magazine?
yeah,
Or just
all of it.
everything?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, the fear factor has been big. The move part, I'm fortunate that my husband is an incredible logistics guy. He thrives when he's planning. I like to say planning is his love language. So it's so that is a wonderful gift that he brings to our marriage. So it's great to have him as a partner in it. And it made it a lot more sort of like we take this step, then we do this, then we do this, and it was more methodical. So that took some of the fear factor out of it.
Mm.
Um, The bigger fear factor, I think, for me is this idea of placing the bet on myself. Most of my life I have worked for other organizations and I've had a regular paycheck and all the things, like I often bristled about that, but there's also an enormous sense of, like I know the parameters of my life and it's pretty secure, as secure as it can be in the kind of world we live in. But so to go without that and to say, I am placing all of my chips in my basket. That is still, honestly, that's still a real something that I wouldn't say I struggle with, but it brings stuff up for me all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. How am I going to show up? Who am I going to be in this moment when I
Mm.
feel anxious or I don't want to do, like you were saying about, like there's a lot of production work and scut work and just day-to-day block and tackle stuff that goes into making things. And when I don't feel like doing that, how can I I'm not going to have a boss to either give me a carrot or a stick. So how am I going to do that? And
Yes, yes, the
so
struggle is real. I can so relate to everything you're saying. Wow. Wow, there's nothing like taking on a big venture to, I love how you said figure out who you're going to be. And I can relate to that as well. When I decided to start the podcast, as you said about your this magazine idea, it was just there with you. It was there with you. Same thing with the podcast, only I kept putting it off because I didn't know how to do it. And I didn't have the
yeah,
money to pay somebody to do it. And there
yeah,
was all that going on. And then, you end up doing something and then you're your own boss. There is nobody telling you what to do next. It is such a learning process.
yeah, yeah, it really is. And there's nobody to kind of spitball things with. So
Right.
one of the things that's been great is to start to build like some collaborators. So having a poetry editor come on board,
Yeah.
and this year I worked with a couple of designer and a project manager on creating some swag, and just suddenly having a bit more community around it has been uh, such a game changer, really,
Such a
for
game
how I feel
changer.
about it, and hopefully what's reflected back for our
Yeah.
audience.
That's amazing. Okay, so I have one more question for you. The book previous to the one that's going to be coming out is titled Air Burial. And the question that I have for you around this is you have air burial out in the world, and now you've written this new novel. Was there a difference for you in the writing process, thematically? Anything about those two novels where you can kind of point to this new phase of life that you're in and how that affected your personal writing?
Yeah, that's such a fun question. It's it's a yes and a no. The main character in my earlier novel is a younger woman. She's, I think, 29 in the action of the story. And in the course of writing it, I was in probably my 30s as I wrote that book. So it was very much a young woman's kind of perspective on things. The three main women characters in this new book, one is 44, the other is 57-ish, and there's a 67-year-old woman. So they kind of span the middle later decades, let's just say. And it is really fun to be in all of their different heads and to think about, okay, at 44, what kinds of issues are really dominant. Same in the mid 50s, and then as I get into the upper 60s and kind of facing the later part of life. Um, so really a whole different set of tools to work with in terms of their experiences. I think thematically there's definitely overlap. I mean, I'm still who I am, and the things that I care about and want to write about are, you know, the way I write about them, the way I think about them has changed, but the core concerns and obsessions aren't that different. So
Yeah.
there's overlap.
Yeah. And how about process wise? Do you find that your process is completely different now, or is it similar to the
No,
first
it's not
experiences?
too different, I wouldn't say.
Uh-huh.
What I would say is that I have a lot more confidence in the process. I really trust. I trust that if I show up, the material will show up. The characters will tell me what they want to say. They will show me the story. I have enormous confidence in that part of it just because I've done it now. This is actually the fourth book that I've written, and I know myself as a writer in that sense, and I don't have a lot of second guessing about that part. There's plenty of other second guessing that goes on in the process, but that's part of the process.
Love it. Wow. So what are you most excited about right now? It's coming up.
Oh boy. I just today actually confirmed with the author Joanne Harris, who is the author of the book Chocolat, that was made into a wonderful movie, and she's written 20 other books besides. She agreed to do an interview for a certain age, so I'm super excited. She wrote a piece for us a few years ago about her creative process, and she was lovely to work with, so I'm super excited to interview her. I love to do interviews and profiles of people, so I'm looking forward to doing a few more of those in the months to come. I've got a few other projects under the hood that I can't really talk too much about, but that are really super exciting on the horizon. Some collaborations that are, I think, going to be really powerful. So very, very much lots of fun stuff to come in the new year. So I'm excited for it.
Excited for you. So excited for you. How can people find you, find your books, find Certain Age?
Absolutely. Certain Age is certainagemag.com. And my work, you can get an excerpt of my new book at my website, which is jeanshieldsfleming.com.
Awesome. I will also have links to those in the show notes for you if you're driving or out walking and are not in front of a screen right now. And Jean, thank you so much for your time today and for this conversation. I so enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. Same. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you.
Wow, wasn't that an incredible conversation? Jean's story is such a beautiful reminder that it is never too late to reinvent yourself, take bold risks, and create something truly meaningful. Whether it's moving across the globe or starting a new project, the possibilities for our lives are endless when we embrace change with curiosity and courage. If Jean's journey inspired you as much as it inspired me, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Send me an email, latebloomerliving@gmail.com. You can find links to Certain Age magazine and Jean's work in the show notes, so be sure to check those out. And hey, if you're enjoying this podcast, please take a moment to leave a review or share the episode with a friend. It really helps us reach more people who are ready to reimagine what's possible in midlife and beyond. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Keep dreaming big, stay curious, and as always, remember, it is never too late to bloom. Until next time.